Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always up for a good deep dive.
Today, we're going deep on a question that's been pondered for ages. What does it mean to be human?
The age-old question. And we've got a fascinating guide for this journey.
Right. We're diving into Nancy Pearcey's Love Thy Body.
This book blew my mind, really gets into how we think about ourselves.
Yeah. Pearcey connects philosophy, ethics, even hot-button issues like abortion and sexuality.
It's not just about those issues themselves, but the deeper worldview behind them, right?
Absolutely. Pearcey argues there's been a secular moral revolution brewing for centuries.
It's like these current debates, they're just the tip of the iceberg.
Totally. And to understand them, Pearcey says we have to go way back, understand how we got here.
I love that approach, digging into the historical roots. It's like she's saying, to get the present, you got to understand the past.
Makes sense. So where do we even start with this secular moral revolution?
Well, Pearcey points to the split in Western thought, this idea of two separate domains of truth.
Two domains. So, like, truth is divided.
Kinda. It's like we've built a wall between science and morality, facts on one side, values on the other.
Okay, so science gets the objective truth, and morality is subjective, just personal opinions.
That's how it's often seen, yeah. Science gets the hard facts, while morality and religion are relegated to feelings and beliefs.
And Pearcey argues that this split, this wall, has shaped how we see the human body.
Oh, absolutely. It leads to what she calls the body-person split.
Body-person split. Okay, break that down for me. What does that even mean?
So we have the body, right? The physical stuff, cells and organs, a product of evolution.
Like the body is just a biological machine.
In a way, yeah. But then there's the person,
Yeah,
the thinking, feeling, moral agent, the self that seems separate.
So it's like saying my body is just a vehicle and my mind is the driver.
It's a good analogy, but then that raises the question, where's the real me? And what happens if that vehicle needs repairs?
Whoa, yeah, heavy stuff. I'm already seeing how this gets tricky, especially with things like abortion.
Right. Exactly. And that's where Pearcey's critique comes in. She argues this body-person split devalues the body. It allows us to see it as something separate from our true selves.
Okay, I'm kind of with you, but also, isn't there some truth to separating the physical from the mental or spiritual? Like, we don't treat our bodies the same as our thoughts.
That's a fair point, and it seems intuitive to separate them.
Yeah.
But Pearcey argues that this separation isn't as simple as it appears. Our thoughts, emotions, even our sense of self, they're all deeply intertwined with our physical bodies.
Okay, I think I'm starting to see what you mean. It's like you can describe a painting as just blobs of color, but you lose the art, the emotion, the meaning the artist put into it.
Exactly. A human being is more than just the sum of their parts. To truly understand ourselves, we need to see the body and the person as an integrated whole.
This is getting pretty deep.
Yeah.
But before we go even further, I think we need to understand how this body-person split got so deeply rooted in our thinking.
Good point. And to understand that, we need to travel back in time to a period when the dominant worldview saw nature, including the human body, as reflecting a divine purpose. Think of it like a giant cosmic tapestry, every thread perfectly woven to create this meaningful whole.
Oh, this is where the concept of teleology comes in, right? That everything has a purpose, a goal.
Bingo. And this view had a huge impact on morality. Moral rules were guidelines for living in harmony with that inherent purpose, becoming the best version of ourselves.
So it's like the body was a blueprint, a guide to a good life.
Yeah.
And morality was about following those instructions.
Exactly. But then Darwin entered the scene. His theory of evolution challenged this entire worldview.
Oh, yeah. Darwin. I remember learning about him. Pretty mind-blowing stuff. So was it simply that he dethroned the idea of a divine designer?
It was more subtle than that. Darwin suggested that nature's apparent design wasn't really designed at all, but rather the result of random variation and natural selection.
Okay, so no designer, no grand plan. Does that mean the human body is just random, meaningless?
That's the heart of it. This shift towards a purely materialistic view had huge implications. It's like the threads of that cosmic tapestry were cut loose, just a jumble of meaningless fibers now.
Wow, I'm starting to see the connection here. So how did this new materialistic worldview impact our understanding of being human? How did the body-person split really take root?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's where we'll pick up in our next segment. We'll explore how this materialistic view, combined with the body-person split, has shaped how we approach ethics, especially those hot-button issues like abortion and sexuality.
Oh, I can't wait. This is getting so interesting. I'm hooked.
Oh.
Okay, so we've talked about this body-person split. Now let's dive into how it plays out in some big ethical debates, like abortion.
Yeah, this is where it gets really real.
For sure. So how does the body-person split connect to the abortion debate?
Well, Pearcey says it's all about separating the developing fetus from the idea of personhood.
Right, like the fetus isn't considered a person until a certain point. I've heard arguments about viability, consciousness when a fetus can feel pain. It seems like it's all about finding that magic moment.
Exactly. And that's the problem Pearcey points out. The very act of trying to pinpoint that moment, it's already rooted in the body-person split.
I see what you mean. It's like saying, before this point, it's just a body. After this point, it's a person. But what if we're drawing that line in the wrong place? What if it's not that simple?
Precisely. It's like we're trying to put a square peg in a round hole, force this complex process of development into a neat little box.
Okay, but I'm also thinking, there are differences between a fetus and a newborn baby. We don't give them the same rights. So isn't there some validity to that?
Absolutely. Pearcey acknowledges that personhood isn't static. Our capacities and responsibilities develop over time, but she argues that this development doesn't take away the inherent dignity and worth of every human being, regardless of their stage.
So it's not about saying a fetus is exactly the same as a baby, but recognizing that even in its early stages, it deserves to be treated with respect as part of the human family.
Exactly. Pearcey is challenging us to look deeper, to ask ourselves whether these attempts to pinpoint the moment of personhood are really about controlling life and death, deciding who deserves protection and who doesn't.
Man, this is heavy stuff. But I'm starting to see how this body-person split plays out in other areas too, like with sexuality.
Oh, for sure. Especially when we talk about sexual orientation and gender identity, there's this idea that the body is malleable, something we can change to fit our desires or self-perception.
Right, like the body becomes this separate thing, almost like a tool, rather than part of our core identity.
That's exactly what Pearcey points out. This view of the body, separate and somehow less important than our inner feelings, it stems from that body-person split. It allows us to treat the body as a means to an end.
It's so interesting, right? Because on the one hand, we live in a culture obsessed with the body, fitness, beauty, looking perfect. But then at the same time, there's this undercurrent that the body isn't really that important. It's all about who we are on the inside.
It's a strange paradox, for sure. We're bombarded with messages to perfect our bodies, while simultaneously being told they're ultimately irrelevant, that we can transcend them through technology, through self-identification, through sheer willpower.
It's like we're caught in this weird in-between space, obsessed with our bodies, but also disconnected from them in a way. No wonder we're struggling to figure out what it means to be human.
And Pearcey's work offers a way out of that struggle. She challenges us to see our bodies not as obstacles to overcome, but as integral expressions of who we are, to see them as reflections of a deeper purpose, something we might be missing.
That's a really powerful idea. It makes me wonder. Maybe all this ethical hand-wringing comes from losing sight of that deeper purpose.
You're hitting the nail on the head. It's that irony of materialism we talked about. We claim that matter is all there is, yet we end up devaluing the material world, including our own bodies.
It's like saying the Mona Lisa is just some paint smudges. Technically, maybe, but you're totally missing the point.
Exactly. Reducing the human body to just cells and chemical reactions ignores the beauty, the complexity, the purpose that's woven into our very being.
So if we want to get beyond these ethical dilemmas, rediscover what it means to be human, maybe we need to start by appreciating our bodies. See them as something amazing, something sacred, not just some random collection of parts.
Beautifully said. Which leads to the next big question. If our bodies are more than just machines, if they reflect a deeper purpose, then where do we find that purpose? How do we reconcile science with that longing for meaning, for something beyond the material?
Ooh, that's the big one. And that's exactly what we'll explore in our final segment. We'll dive into Pearcey's vision for a more holistic view of what it means to be human, one that brings together faith and reason, science and spirituality. Don't miss it.
Okay, so we've journeyed through this body-person split and its impact on how we think about being human, especially when it comes to these big ethical issues. But now, the big question. Where do we go from here? How do we move forward with a more, whole understanding of ourselves?
Pearcey dives right into that. She says we can't just throw science out the window, but we also can't ignore that deep human need for purpose, meaning, something beyond just the physical world.
It's like we're at this crossroads. One path is all about science and materialism. The other leads towards faith and spirituality. And Pearcey seems to say there's a way to connect them, find a path that includes both.
Exactly. And for her, that path starts with a Christian understanding of creation. Seeing the world, ourselves included, as made by a loving creator helps us understand both the physical and the, I guess you could say, soul parts of being human. So no need to pick between science and faith, right? It's more about holding both, seeing how they each give us a different view of this whole human existence thing.
Right on. Pearcey says this lets us see the body not as just some random atoms, but as something made with intention, with dignity, reflecting God's purpose.
I see how that connects to the ethics we've been talking about. If our bodies are inherently valuable, made in God's image, it changes how we see abortion, sexuality, even taking care of our own health.
Absolutely. It shifts things dramatically. No more drawing lines in the sand or claiming rights over a body that's supposedly meaningless. Instead, we recognize every human being's worth, from the very beginning to the natural end.
I'm following you. But what about people who don't share that Christian view? Does Pearcey's argument only work if you believe in God the way she does?
That's a really important question, and it gets at what Pearcey's really trying to do. While her ideas come from a Christian perspective, they can speak to anyone, regardless of their religion or beliefs.
So the ideas about dignity, purpose, the connection between the physical and spiritual, they can resonate with people from different backgrounds.
Definitely. Pearcey even uses ideas from philosophers and thinkers from all kinds of backgrounds. It's not about forcing one specific belief, but about creating a way to understand being human that goes beyond just materialism or just spirituality.
This is making a lot of sense. It's like she's giving us a whole new way to talk about these issues, a new set of ideas. Instead of getting stuck on when life begins or what rights a fetus has, we can focus on the inherent dignity of every human being, how our bodies and souls are connected.
Exactly. That's a game changer. And it can change not just how we see these big issues, but how we treat ourselves, how we relate to each other, how we interact with the world.
Wow, this has been a deep dive indeed. We've gone from Darwin's impact on how we see nature to the philosophy behind some of the biggest ethical debates today, and we've ended up with this hopeful message that we can connect science and faith, find awe in our bodies, and rediscover the meaning built into our very existence.
It's been fantastic exploring all this with you. I hope our listeners have been challenged, inspired, maybe even had their minds blown a little by this dive into what it means to be human.
Me too. And to our listeners, one last thought to ponder. If, like Pearcey says, our bodies are more than machines, if they reflect a deeper purpose, something divine, how does that change how you live your life? What choices will you make? What relationships will you build? What kind of world will you create? Because your body isn't just a container, it's something sacred, a masterpiece that deserves wonder and respect.
Keep exploring, keep those questions coming, and keep diving deep.